Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ken and today's video is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while, narcissism in the gay community. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I am a counsellor supporting men and women through quarter life and midlife crisis, offering couples counselling and supporting those who are having relational challenges to get to the other side of that. And this channel is all about helping gay men to navigate the difficulties that we go through in order to have better relationships with those around us and ourselves. Now, narcissism is such a hot button topic that I'm going to define my own thing on in just a hot second. But really what this video is all about is understanding the toxic patterns of behavior that can happen in our community, separate to the video I did on toxic behavior in the community, to better understand what's going on and also to help you navigate it. And if this video is helpful, please like and subscribe. It greatly supports me. If you're looking for a session, feel free to click the link below and please share your own experiences with narcissism in our community. Now, a lot of people talk about narcissism online, so I'm not going to give you the same details that a lot of other great channels out there provide. So let's go through the basics. If someone is exhibiting narcissistic behavior, they usually are characterized by their black and white thinking, their ability to gaslight and say things like, "You're so sensitive. You are such a terrible partner. You're never thinking of me. You're useless." So a lot of that you language. There's people who are chronically cheating because they have low self-esteem. In fact, most people with narcissistic traits usually have low self-esteem. They are constantly in need of supply, validation from other people in order to make them feel better about themselves. And they also tend to have very shaky egos. They are very quick to tell you it's their way or the highway. And they often have a lot of emotional dysregulation where it's a little bit more than someone who's just feeling a little bit grumpy. When they're angry, everybody knows about it, and everyone's stepping on eggshells around them in order to placate their emotional well-being. Now, as a counsellor in Australia, based on an Australian institution, I can't diagnose someone with narcissistic personality disorder, but the behaviour does start to speak out for itself. And I want to make it clear, just because someone has narcissistic traits does not make someone a diagnosable narcissist. In fact, that's kind of irrelevant. The key thing I want to illustrate for you is the behavior, which is very easily identifiable. If someone starts exhibiting the cycle of love bombing, devalue, discard, you'll feel the following. Meeting someone where you feel like you've known them your entire life. They're flattering you, they feel like you're the best person ever, and slowly but surely, they start to become passive-aggressive or mean. They don't say the nice things that they used to, they start to become more distant emotionally, and you start to feel like you need to get them back to where they were when you met them. And then at some point, they may just leave, they may cheat on you, or they may constantly degrade you to the point where you feel like doing something about it because you can no longer stand to be in this situation with a person who's providing no intimacy. That is a typical narcissistic cycle. People who develop these very strong narcissistic traits, in my experience, usually come from one of two origin stories marked by a lot of traumatic abusive experiences and or deprivation of love. So the way that can show up in one instance is one child has grown up with very abusive parents, or one, and they also aren't made to feel any love at all. They constantly feel like they need to strive for love. They may also use their backstory about how they were unloved as a justification for their bad behavior, and also claim how they're doing this in order to, get love from other people, so that external validation seeking. And the other part can usually be someone who maybe grew up as a bit of a golden child where they were entitled, they were never made to realize that their actions can actually hurt other people, and so they're really disconnected from their empathy. They really do a lot of entitled behavior like cheating around because for them they think that they can get away with that without actually taking stock of how they're hurting other people. Now, with that all out of the way, I want to make it very clear that if you're in a situation where you know someone who has these traits, whether it be a lover, mother, father, sister, brother, or friend, the key thing I want to stress is that you're not a pseudo-psychologist, so don't go attempting to diagnose people. But if the language serves you and supports you and you feel the need to use the word "they are a narcissist," "they are acting narcissistically," more power to you. If it helps you get to the reasonable conclusion, which is, what do I need to do about this in order to protect myself? Fantastic, you've come to the right place. Because at the end of the day, these behaviors are, for the most part, fixed. They're not going to change ever, and you trying to beat down on their doors to see the error of their ways is only going to cause you frustration. Focus on yourself, focus on your healing, and that usually means leaving, or at the very least, putting some distance between you and that narcissistically traded person. So let's talk about how narcissism can show up in the gay community. To give you a few personalities where I see this happening a lot is very hyper-feminine men who use their personality as a way to beat down others. The men who are also claiming that they're hypersexualized and that they're able to go about and have sex with as many guys as they want without thinking about the consequences. The men who are extremely passive-aggressive, known to gossip a lot, and are also prone to being very are also the personalities that typically have a lot of these really narcissistic traits. The guys who are focused on perfectionism, needing to have the best of everything in order to feel like they're good enough. The men who are also hyper-masculine and also need to defend that state of themselves in order to protect themselves from being seen as having any feminine traits. These are examples of how narcissism can show up in our community in ways that are completely unhealthy. For a lot of gay men, this is a phase that serves them exceptionally well because it allows them to command a crowd and also garner a lot of external validation. Yet they are very often miserable inside. For every time they get swiped on dating apps, find people through Grindr, and have a lot of sex, they're back on the same addiction train of trying to get people to love them. Many of these men often have chronic health issues down the line and also feel like they're going to die alone because they can't connect with others because they put up this massive wall between them and the people that are around them, and it really comes out as a form of self-sabotage. But in kind of ways of putting it, it's a form of self-protection. Many men do not feel like they can be vulnerable, and as a consequence, they burn so many bridges just to protect themselves. This is just the way it is, unfortunately, and unless they want to change, they're not going to. And as a gay white man, I've got to be honest, I definitely grew up with my own share of challenges and didn't feel comfortable being gay for a very long time. And I can imagine it's going to be very similar and maybe different for people, especially those men who come from different cultures where being gay is not acceptable, but it does serve them to have more narcissistic traits to justify their behavior. And I want to be very clear when I say justify their behavior. It's not an excuse for the behavior. It's more of just important to let us see how someone's experiences of being bullied, traumatized, or abused have ultimately led to that outcome. It gives us a picture of what's going on, but it is not an excuse for bad behavior. A person may justify that they cheat all the time because that's just the way I've always been. I didn't get love when I was younger. That's great, but it's not an excuse for why someone should ever need to stick around to support you and your unhealed trauma. So given the fact that many of us have grown up in difficult environments, it's easy to see how many men have grown up with these hyper everything personalities to try and protect themselves in a seemingly unsafe world. Similarly, we can also see many men who didn't grow up with as many traumatic experiences and have actually grown up feeling like it's pretty hunky-dory and that everything's pretty okay, where they don't actually develop a lot of empathy and also can't relate to the struggles that we've gone through. Many men don't understand what it feels like to be closeted, to understand the difficulties of having a very unsafe family environment, or the pain of what we've all collectively gone through, which I think explains why older generations of gay men struggle to relate to younger generations and vice versa, because for some, they just didn't experience one or the other, and there's a lot of prejudices between, I think, both generations for understandable reasons. Doesn't make it right, but we can see where it all comes from. And also, a very common thing that I observe for the gay community is that for a lot of men, they'll often justify their behavior based on their sexuality, being like, well, I'm gay, therefore I can do this, or I'm gay, therefore, I feel like I deserve more attention and special treatment. And it's not everyone, but occasionally the personality can then be used as a way to justify to make someone feel safe. I get where it comes from, and again, it's not an excuse for that behavior. We are gay. It's about as similar as saying I am straight, I am bisexual, I am transgendered, I am transsexual. It does not entitle you to be rude or difficult to someone. It does not entitle you to not think about how your actions are hurting someone. Just because we come from a community where it is a minority doesn't grant us the privilege to be difficult and rude to someone. That is not something that is acceptable. And so as a consequence, it's important to understand that yes, we deserve our own unique treatment, but it's not an excuse. So if you're a gay man watching this and have identified with some of the behavior that I've mentioned, and it can be like, oh God, I do that too, and it's something that I really want to work on, amazing. You've made the first step in a huge journey. The thing that I would say is that's really important is baby steps. You're going to feel terrible if we go down the rabbit hole to be like, why do you feel the way that you feel? And let's talk about your inner child. Chances are you're going to feel a great deal of shame that you're not ready for yet. Shame is arguably the most disgusting emotion to feel, but let me tell you, once you feel it and it's out of your system, you do feel a lot better. But for someone who's more narcissistic, you're hiding loads of it. So, key thing is, if you're someone who can identify with a lot of these traits and also wants to do something about it, my strongest opinion is talk to someone about it. Hell, talk to me. I get paid to do this sort of stuff. But the key thing is that you need to be very realistic that this change is going to be slow and it will ultimately support you. For someone to start tapping into their emotional world, it's really important to start getting comfortable with the uncomfortable emotions that you have. And some of those baby steps can include journaling and also confronting the inner critic that you might have. Many narcissistically traded men usually have very big judgments and also have a tendency to be very critical of others. So usually that can indicate that there's a lot of criticism towards the self. Working through that inner critic and trying to find logical ways to be like, no, actually, I don't believe that I'm not lovable, or I don't believe that I'm not worthy enough, or I'm not enough. If you're able to start that conversation and start to rewire some of those thoughts and feelings, you're on the right path. Because if you start to combat that inner critic that's constantly criticizing everyone as well as yourself, you're going to be able to feel like you're able to tap more into that inner source of love. Bit hokey to hear me saying it like this, but trust me, when you tap into that, you no longer feel the need to rely on external validation. So just to round out before I end this video, I want to make it clear, the rhetoric that you can't change someone with narcissism is absolutely accurate because it goes back to the whole thing of you can't change someone. They have to want to make the change. And even then, watching and waiting for someone to make those changes is like pulling teeth. You're better off asking yourself, what do I need? Am I willing to put up with this amount of thrashing in order to make a relationship work? I gotta be honest, it's not for everyone. So at the end of the day, it's important to understand that even with all the best help in the world, it's still up to that individual. And to be honest, even as they're evolving and changing, they may not want to be with you anymore because they realize they don't want this. You may not want this because you're not really feeling like it's worth holding on to. And that may not just be with a lover. It could also be with a friend or a family member. The key thing is that unlearning a lot of this stuff is going to take time because it didn't take you overnight to learn these narcissistic traits, and it's not going to be overnight that you unlearn them. Another thing too, I'm not talking about people with NPD. That's unsolvable. And I want to make it clear, if you're in a relationship with someone where you're feeling gaslit, you've got low self-esteem, you've got lots of self-doubt, and you're also really unsure as to whether or not you're the one who's responsible or not, chances are you're the victim in the relationship. So with that all in mind, I want to make it clear that if you're in a situation where you are being abused by someone with narcissistic traits, you need to take care of yourself and your well-being. You are not fit or ready to have the conversation of, well, everyone has narcissistic traits. Not yet. That is a conversation that you can deal with at another point in time. But when you're in a state of shock and abuse, you're not ready to have that entire critical thinking. You need to get to a place of safety. And that may mean leaving the relationship or getting as much distance between you and the other person. I will not downplay the risk of narcissistic abuse. It is chronic. And I don't care if the person has the capacity to change. At the end of the day, the person who's being abused needs to be able to find a place of safety because at the end of the day, that's what's important for them. Not getting stuck on is that person a narcissist. To wrap up, this video isn't really intended to go into the wealth of narcissism in the gay community because there's so much that you can talk about it. It's really to give a snapshot of how the behavior shows up, which arguably, in my opinion, is the most important thing. If you recognize that you're on the receiving end of this, or you also recognize that you have the traits and you want to work on it, that is the goal of this video, is to help you be like, okay, what do I need to do to focus on myself? So with that all being said, I hope that this video has provided a bit of clarity and also a bit of an understanding as to how it shows up in our community, because granted, it's, you know, particularly evident and also deeply corrosive for all of us at such a soul level. So if you want to work on it, more power to you, because it's such a gift to work through that. And with that all being said, if you're looking to work on it with me, feel free to click the link below. I'm very happy to support you. Other than that though, if this video was helpful, please like and subscribe, and please share in the comments below your experience with narcissism in the gay community. Goodbye for now, and speak next week.